A quiet but determined man took a stroll around Rome, Georgia in 1963 and was astonished to find out there were 30 playable tennis courts in the entire city and county. At that point, George Wallis became the most important contributor to the game in the history of Northwest Georgia.
George Wallis was the driving force in tennis in Rome for many, many years.
Wallis and others created the Coosa Valley Tennis Association, and along the way, they championed Rome's effort to land juniors tournaments, like the Georgia Junior Open. In fact, Wallis had a soft spot for juniors and the development of younger players.
What he did on the administration side and leading the Coosa Valley Tennis Associations to one of the great CTAs in Georgia was a real strong point for George. And he had a real passion for the USTA schools program and was one of the real pioneers in pushing the schools program and getting tennis introduced to tens of thousands of kids in Northwest Georgia. So many kids were introduced to tennis because of George, and it would be interesting to note today how many people first put a racket in their hand because of George Wallis, but I suspect that number's tens of thousands.
George Wallis was truly the Pied Piper of tennis in Rome, Georgia. I had the great privilege of growing up there. I learned a lot of my tennis playing doubles with George Wallis and a number of the men when I was a kid, 12 and 13 years old.
Wallis was also a successful businessman in the Rome area and had a way of getting projects done.
Yeah, George was a real bulldog when it came down to doing something and doing something right. And he'd hang on to an idea and a concept and take it from start to finish. And George was not one that was easy to say no to. So he got the business leaders, he got all of the key people in Rome behind the things he was doing, and it really helped deliver that product in Northwest Georgia.
He wasn't a bad player in his own right, winning several local seniors tournaments many times, and he had a state ranking in the 35 doubles. So as much as anyone, George Wallis knew what players wanted and what leagues needed.
I think George had such a love for tennis that one of the things that happened at times in communities like Rome is a tennis professional would come in and develop tennis and develop programs, and they would leave and then they would have to start all over again. So George's vision to start a community tennis association, so regardless of tennis pros coming and leaving, tennis remains stable and growing in a community like Rome. And he was a leader and a visionary in a time to start community tennis association when there weren't any others in the United States.
Not an elite player, not a tactician. He was simply this.
George was a lifelong contributor to tennis, not only in Rome, Georgia, but throughout the state of Georgia. And you couldn't ask him anything without him volunteering to do it and doing one heck of a job. A very nice, modest man who really loved tennis, willingness to promote the game of tennis, expand the game of tennis, not only in Rome, Georgia, where he had tremendous impact, but throughout the entire state. He was a special contributor.
George Wallis is a worthy member of the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame.